so delighted to be here with all of you because while I have my amazing panelists, I think this is a conversation for all of us. I am Dr. Tanya Mishra. I'm the founder and CEO of SureStart. We are a New York-based, currently, AI education startup. And to join me in this conversation around how do we all future-proof students that Kamal earlier reminded us, the one thing that is a non-negotiable for parents across India, across the world, how do we future-proof our students for AI's uncharted territory? So to share some answers, to share some ideas, to really brainstorm with all of you, I have three amazing experts leading three very future-forward educational organizations and schools. Right next to me, I have Arunabh Singh from Healthy Planet Schools, then Meghna Gorukanti Jopali from Meru International Schools, and Kunal Dalal from JVCN Education. Thank you, panelists, for being with me. And just to start off our conversation, and because I want you to do all of the work of introducing yourself, I would love for you to share about yourself, your organizations, and what you believe may be the single most important skill or mindset we need to help our students develop in order to be future ready. Kunal?
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for having us. It's a really interesting topic that we're discussing, very relevant. We run the JBCN group of schools in Bombay. We have 5 schools that follow largely the IB and the IGCSE, the international programs. They are premium schools. We have about 6,500 learners across all our schools. Intend to continue building quality educational institutes. And that's what we do. The single most important skill, I think, to single one out is very, very difficult. But if I had to, I think I would say creativity. I think that's a skill that's required for learners today.
Thank you, Kunal.
Hi, this is Meghna. We run schools in Hyderabad under the name Meru International Schools. We're fairly a young organization. We're a 7-year-old school. We have 2, and we deal with CBSE and Cambridge. And the 3rd school is on the way, and I'm really happy to be here. So the single most important thing, as Kunal mentioned, it's really hard to just pick one single thing, right? And it is uncharted territory. AI is that space for us. So I would say, I think, developing a skill of restraint with respect to how much of AI to use in our current world for the future world, is it really required? And because I think there should be enough research has to be done to figure out how AI will play on cognitive functioning. And you know, when you basically pick up a pen and you write, and they say it activates some part of your brain, right? You memorize better, you understand things better. It's moved to, a lot of our society has moved into using the keyboard to write some of our content and understanding things. How does that impact the child's learning or the adult's learning? So restrain and ensure there are proper protocols and research is what I would think of at this point of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, this one's louder. My name is Arunabh. I assist a team of fantastic teachers in running Nehru World School in Ghaziabad and Healthy Planet in Noida, which is an early years campus. I'm also the senior vice president for Arise, which is an industry body for K-12 schools in India. And Vinesh paid me to say this. Vinesh is the director general and CEO. And in barter, he's going to take photographs. So that's the deal that we've got going on. But if you're interested in Arise, which is this industry body for K-12 schools in India, Vinesh is the man that you speak to. To me, the skill that educators should focus on in learners hasn't changed since AI. I would say it has stayed on. Every time there has been a shift in technology, I would want children or educators or students to be nimble on their feet and stay problem solvers. So in that respect, that need hasn't changed. Perhaps the focus is shifting from having your supremacy because you had content mastery. That needle is shifted. But you needing to be nimble on your feet and wanting to be a problem solver, I think that has sort of stayed consistent.
Thank you. Creativity, problem solving, improved cognitive functioning, all of these, are skills we have each year had to master and are probably continuing to develop. And these are the things that are sort of the durable skills. They will need to continue, perhaps with new tools. So let's talk a little bit about the brass tacks of AI education. So I'll start with a quote from Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, who said, "India will be the front office of the world's AI revolution." And now it's sort of me bringing together what as a panel we have in the past discussed, that this would be continuing the significant role that India has played in the global tech economy over the last 2 decades as the provider of more than half of the world's tech-related outsourcing needs. However, to maintain this momentum that we have had and to sort of make true this very inspiring quote that India will be the front office of AI revolution, we must proactively integrate AI education at all levels in our course offerings. And Kunal, I'll go back to you and ask you to share your thoughts around what steps do you see K-12 schools and universities either taking currently, perhaps starting with your schools, or you believe that they should take to ensure that students are equipped with the necessary AI skills to capitalize on the growth opportunity that AI provides in the next decade?
It's a long question. See, I think a lot of schools are already... So let me start off by saying AI and technology is here to stay. We have to embrace it. We have to use it in the right way. It's important that young learners in schools understand the benefits of AI, effective use of AI, but also understand how it can be skewed or it can harm them. Or recently I came across a term of AI hallucination, which is what people are talking about. So I think kind of guiding the learners and giving them the right tools to understand how we can use AI in the right way and how we can use it effectively is, I think, at the forefront of any school or at JBCN, what we focus on, including workshops, conversations, getting in experts. The second thing is there are lots of tools that can really enable the entire learning process, which we've already started using, that makes learning really effective. There's a tool called Magic School, for example, which customizes and analyzes a student to understand what are their learning gaps, what are the learning, what is the analysis of that particular student through his journey. And then not only do they create lesson plans as to how you can teach them, but even activities based on what is the best learning methodology for those students. There's Toddle, there's a whole bunch of apps and tools that are available, which are used for customization, that's used for mathematics, literacy. There's an amazing tool called Quillbolt, if I'm not mistaken, that's used for literacy in terms of when a learner is kind of comprehending, learning languages, what is the best form and way to teach language, because language is, again, logical thinking. It's a skill that's required. So I think a lot of progressive schools, international schools across India are already adopting tools and understanding the best way to use these tools. But if I may, for a minute, just go on a more philosophical kind of area, I think as schools, the idea is not to focus on the skills required for AI, but on skills required for change, something what Arnab said earlier. Innovation, keeping innovation at the helm of teaching, adaptability. We often say that today it's not about the teacher getting the right answers, but it's about the teacher teaching the learners to ask the right questions, because that's the skill that's going to be required. Because yesterday there was Google, and then there was AI, which was in a predictive form. Now there's generative AI, and God knows what's going to happen tomorrow and the day after that. So those are the kind of skills, if I can, for example, I think it's about teaching the learners how to identify the problem, not find the solution anymore. Because if you're finding a solution, you're already too late. Someone's already come in and disrupted you. So how do you identify the problem? So I think on a more philosophical journey, I think that's what forward-thinking schools have to focus on, because it's so fast-paced. It's because it's moving so fast. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Thank you, Kunal. I loved how full your answer was and how sort of very tactical. You talked about products and platforms that schools can use, but also the broader philosophy of JVCN, but also other forward-thinking schools. But we earlier had a conversation where we said, one of the things that if we are to sort of focus on these durable skills that frankly every single one of us that are here in this room, innovation, problem solving, but also problem identification. What is a problem worth solving? Teamwork, collaboration. We know that, but it's on the other end of your education when we are actually having to do brass tacks work. We realize that these are the skills that we absolutely need, and many of us, frankly, learn it on the job. And earlier you said, if we have to focus on these skills through project-based learning, we need some changes that actually happen at the university level. And I can completely understand, like coming from running AI programs, boot camps in the US to trying to explore how do we bring it to India, one of the first questions that I was faced with, well, what does assessment look like, right? Because at the end of the day, marks are important. So Kunal, do you want to share some of your thoughts, or others, Arunabh and Meghna, on what would you like universities, what changes would you like in universities' evaluation criteria,
Sorry.
You answered that earlier. I think you should go on. Yeah.
No, just quickly, I think the biggest change is mindset. And what we were discussing earlier is, let's leave the IB schools and students that go to IB schools and may potentially go abroad for an education. The largest part of the student population in India stays back in India. And if they have to get a 95% in math, physics, chemistry, or physics, chem, biology, or 98%, or whatever that cutoff is, to be eligible for some of the best universities and best education, the scope and time for innovation, for creativity, for embedding AI, for embedding any other skill, a soft skill. We often talk about EQ being more important than IQ in today's world. So soft skills are important. How do we find time to embed these skills in the education system if the eventual outcome of K through 12 schools is based on a grade or a percentage you get, because that then determines whether you get into the right university or not. So if the mindset of these universities can change, then it'll allow schools a lot more freedom to say, hey, I can still get into the best university with the 80%, for example, but I have an amazing project, or I had time to build a business plan around, a prototype. So we had one of our learners build a prototype for an EV bike, which he's patented in one of our schools. But he was allowed to do that because the kind of universities he's applying to didn't require a 95%. So he had that time to do it along with, the rest of his education.
The shift that is required for the universities is the need for how a child applying to their university should be totally based on what problem they're solving, and how innovative they are, how creative they are. There's no measure for that, and that's unfortunate. And so hence the measure comes down to a percentage and mark. And when you have so much to deliver in terms of a percentage, it gets really hard. You're curbed. Your creativity is curbed. And that's the shift of mindset that is required in our country.
Thank you, Meghna, for adding on to Kunal's awesome answer, but I'm going to ask you to continue in that vein. This is certainly, how are universities evaluating our students is certainly a challenge, and that's a conversation to be had with universities, at the governmental level, requires our collective mind share, really. But what else do you see as challenges in, whether it's AI, whether it's quantum, whether it's edge computing, or whether it's, blockchain and modern finance? These are the skills we absolutely have to equip our students with. We need literacy, we need mastery and exploration of these ideas, but there are challenges that constrain us. What are some challenges that you think you're experiencing?
Challenges are obviously plenty.
Yeah.
I think a bunch of them are very relevant to our country's growth, and our learner profiles are real-world applications are really lacking in our current ecosystem of schools, which we should really think of. There's a huge language barrier at a very large level in India, especially our country. Learning disabilities have become plenty, and thanks to the overstimulation all around us. These are challenges which I think AI will really help us out, especially Gen AI, the current situation. And if we do not get on board, we will be left behind. So taking these challenges as an opportunity, imagine a child understanding a certain topic in subject in real time, in real world application. A teacher can do only so much, can explain only so much in the limited time with a bunch of kids, around 20 or 30 of them in a class. Imagine a personal tutor actually answering back to you immediately. Today's generation needs instant gratification, and they need answers immediately. Otherwise, you lose their attention span, right? So that really helps. An AI tutor just so personal to you that it understands you, it answers back to you ASAP. And that said, a friend of mine, incidentally, had shifted his child to an international school midterm. And the child had no clue about Spanish, and he had to pass the exam, and I think there were a couple of months to it or whatever. So the child was obviously very worried and had come back to my friend and said, what do I do? So immediately my friend utilized the then previous ChatGPT and generated a paper. This is the curriculum, this is the grade, this is the subject. And once the child finished that paper, finished the assessment, he took a picture, sent it back to ChatGPT and said, give me the assessment and give me the way forward, right? So, and he also gave a time limit of, the child has just 2 hours. I have only 2 hours to figure out the situation. What is a stopgap solution, So immediately he had a plan in place. And that's how he could help his child. And the parent isn't even a teacher. the possibility, this was a challenge. It was overcome by a person who has a full-time job, who doesn't understand Spanish at all. And that's the situation that we could get into for every other challenge in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gave us a great example of really, using AI, but it's a collaborative instruction model, right, between school and parents. And I know our parents, all our parents, and we as parents have been collaborating with our teachers and our school systems to support our kids' education. But as we, move forward with new technologies that are coming at us at a much faster rate than the AI evolution, specifically around Gen AI, has been, I think collaborative instruction or just multi-dimensional collaboration will have to be the new order for education. The more traditional model, where your teacher is, the primary source of all information, it's putting too much burden on the teacher because there are so many new things to learn. We have talked about technical skills, we've talked about durable skills, we have talked about, making that academic knowledge more applicable. So we have to, collaboration has to be the order of the day. And Arunabh, I would love to hear your thoughts about how do we foster this collaboration across all stakeholders in the educational system?
If I were to do another PhD, this would be the topic. And I would take years trying to solve it. But I cannot imagine collaboration happening among stakeholders till such a time that the trust doesn't exist between the stakeholders. So this discussion would actually swear away from AI, and it's fine if it does. As a pedagogical leader and somebody who gets into a classroom almost every day, I feel the crux of what we should be attempting to do, what we should have been attempting to do 10 years back or 100 years back, it hasn't changed. We want to create environments that engage, environments that make students more curious, environments that give students agency to ask better questions, and be aware that perfection is a hypothetical concept, and that's not what we're really chasing. We are chasing humans who would be malleable to new situations and would be resilient to try and keep solving these new problems. Because if one thing is changing faster than ever before, it certainly is a rate of change. And I'm quite sure the generation before us, when the radio came or the television came or the internet came, all of these questions had come before as well. So in school, if you have to create collaborative experiences, there's something that we've been doing at our school. We call it Startup Superstars. So from 6-year-old onwards, all the way to 17-year-olds, we get them to first crowdsource a business idea, and the school then funds every classroom for their business idea. And these kids, as young as 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, run that business with real money. And now some of these shops have also gone online. They've gone outside the school. They're going and setting them up in fairs. And they're starting to solve problems that school would never offer to them in the school curriculum. And when they're coming back and sharing their experiences, you can see that learning has happened. And I think I concur with what my colleague was saying here earlier, that universities probably need to sync themselves with the same thought. But our focus here should be what can we do and not what somebody else can. And how can we maneuver all of this happening in the 6 hours or 7 hours that the student has with us. So to create collaboration, we need to create trust. And to trust, we need to give agency to people. And it can happen with simple things. For example, the IT policy in the school I work in says, if you break it, we will replace it full stop. And there is no asterisk. There is no penalizing you getting it wrong. So mistakes are welcome. Negligence is not tolerated, but mistakes are very welcome. If you're always going to hit the bullseye, then perhaps we're not taking enough chances. So give agency, trust people, and allow for these collaborative experiences to take place. I have reasons to believe that our parent body is acutely aware of this need. And even if our curriculum boards, because they are solving it for, do you know how many children under 17 years of age India has? Make a guess. How many children under 17 years of age does India have? Have. Okay, the answer to this is 265 million, which is roughly equal to about 80% of all of America's population. As a population, for people who are here from Europe, it's the population combined for UK, Germany, France, and Belgium. That's the size of the problem that India is attempting to solve. So let us not go outside the room and say what somebody else can do, but what can we do is my short response to this.
Arnab, I love the story of your school and your students, and I'm going to go look online for their shops because kids come up with some of the best solutions. Because remember when we have those, our little youngins, when they're first born, like they can see things we can't because we are so tall and they are tiny and closer to the ground. It's the same thing, right? They have experiences and ideas that we have almost put constraints on for ourselves. So I love that you are doing that at your school, and I love that you talked about agency and trust, and creating space for the students to explore, to get things wrong, and to try it again. So a crucial part in any kid's journey is, of course, educational journeys with their teachers. And between the use of ChatGPT and all of these new ideas coming to the fore, how do we create psychological safety and trust for our teachers, especially in the face of the myth that AI is coming for their jobs, right? What have you done at your school?
In 2016, I tweeted, technology will not replace teachers, but teachers who use technology efficiently will replace those who don't. And in came the pandemic, and of very few things that I said in the past this came true. While edtech companies made us believe in the pandemic that they could solve education without the teacher, but here we are, and we now know that that is not happening. A job of the teacher is not just the teacher is not the vehicle to transplant content from one brain to the other. It's far more humane. The empathy, the motivation, the trust, that makes the teacher the teacher. So if the teacher can leverage on technology, and not everybody can leverage it in a similar manner, I'll give you an example. Some of us know of what AI agents are. I know of this school where what they're doing is they've got 20 AI agents, and there are 20 different personas of different types of students. So a student persona that is neurodiverse, somebody with ADHD, somebody who's not interested in schooling, somebody who is. So they've got these 20 personas. And when lesson plans are getting created, before the lesson plans are being taught to children, they're being taught to these AI agents, and they're getting feedback from these agents before they go to the classroom. So the beta testing is happening before student time is getting used there. There is this Indian company called CoSchool. They're the ones who are enabling all of this to happen. That, to me, is enabling the teacher with the tools. And also, I believe, as educators and as education leaders, we need to keep sharing this with teachers, that the time when you were the know-all of everything that there was to know is long gone. And I'll share a very small anecdote. I was on a school round, and grade 3 were being taught states of matter. So I go into the classroom, and I ask these kids, so how many states of matter? Many of them raise their hands, and one who answers says 4. It's like, no, but this solid liquid gas, this kid has probably not understood. So I go close to him and says, darling, which is the 4th state of matter? To which he says, plasma. And then realizing that I have this look, he says, well, plasma is the state of matter that is caused by heat or extreme pressure. And I'm like, wow, this primary teacher did not come into this classroom today for this kid to introduce the concept of plasma when they were going to learn about solid, liquid, gas. So allowing your teachers to not have all the knowledge, at least in the brain, and say, it is happening perpetually, that is a mindset shift. So culture shift is something that is required for us to be ready for the world of AI.
Thank you, Aruna. Very inspiring stories, both about your students, but also about how you've created this psychological safety for your teachers to use the tools that are available to them, but also do continuous learning in these areas. I'm going to slightly shift and ask a different question. All three of you lead amazing schools. You're very future forward. You think about your students' learning with a very broad lens. And frankly, without being too crass, your schools and your students have the resources and have probably the environments and the support at home largely to engage in these opportunities. Yet in India, and frankly every country, there is a wide variety of resources and educational opportunities available to kids, across the country, whether it's here in India or whether it's in the US or, countries in Europe. So given that, how can we, upskill the students that go to our institutions with the future readiness that they need without exacerbating social inequities? Meghna?
So obviously, digital divide is really there. It's really present, and I think globally, if you consider every other country, it's I think at an 80% level, and in India, I think it's at a 90-20 situation, or maybe I'm being optimistic by saying 10%. I would say that AI is definitely a tool that can bridge that gap, namely because I would like to take an example. I think Geo has launched a Geo Meet, where, say, a Harvard professor is speaking in English, a person in any state, like for instance, a person can convert that into Bhojpuri and listen to it. And imagine the penetration that would have, imagine the penetration of that kind of content to a person in a very remote village in India. So for the benefit of the group that's listening, I know there's a lot of diverse people, our country is definitely developing, and we're really looking up. Our GDP is great, everything's going great, but we're still at a 80 to 90%, even though there's internet penetration, thanks to a lot more technology, everything is on point. We're still growing, but still there's a huge gap in terms of resources, and hence my example of how English content piece can be converted into a regional piece. And I think we have, 36 different kinds of languages? I'm not even sure how many kinds of languages. And it gets really difficult to create instruction mediums in each language. And AI will definitely bridge that gap. And as educators, I'd come across a service called the Citizen Services that the AP government has enabled. And the Citizen Services is basically integrated into your WhatsApp, where it helps out anybody who would want to fill their government ID proofs, anybody who would want to understand what kind of schemes that are allocated to, say, their girl child. If a woman wants to know under what quota they would get a loan by the government. These are all government policies. It gets very difficult for an uneducated person to fill. And there are these liaison officers who end up filling, and then you have to pay out the money, etc. Imagine all this data will be with us soon. And if we could do the same thing in terms of education, if you could integrate the same kind of a platform with a service like WhatsApp, only because so many people are on it, I think that would really improve or reduce the gap. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Meghna, for just showcasing once more, sort of as leaders who are leading these amazing future-forward organizations, how you are considering, empowering students that are outside of your doors. And I know this is the very beginning of our conversation, and we have about, we're past our time. But I would like to give, ask you to share one word, one thought, one sentence around where do you see we can make the greatest impact in future-proofing our students?
Through AI. Again, I think there's not one particular impact, but if I had to choose one, I think a quote comes to my mind where someone said, a student said, "Don't teach me how you know how to teach, but teach me the way I want to learn." So I think AI will enable and give you the right tools for teachers to customize their learning approach, the activities, the thought process, the content, the language if required, to teach in the most effective manner for the way that child can learn.
Thank you. Meghna?
I'm still a little hesitant about this. So I would say restrain and balance. I think you definitely have to embrace AI as is, but we also have to understand the effects and adverse effects that it may bring upon. You can get lazy easily. You can get very dependent easily. And what it does to your cognitive function is a very, very important point to think about. So I would say embrace it, but I think we as a society should come up and ensure about the right protocols to come into play at what age, to use what tool, I think is very, very relevant.
Well, if we can create resilient problem solvers, or keep creating resilient problem solvers, we'd have them ready for whatever that future is.
Well, thank you, Kunal, Meghna, Arunabh, for inspiring all of us with amazing examples, your optimism for the future, and really the philosophy of how we should be building leaders who are going to be all our leaders in the next decade. The kid that's sitting in 6th and 7th and 10th grade is going to be making decisions about how future technologies are used to empower our world. And I think with educators like all of you, we're in safe hands. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.